somebody may look at me and say, hey, he's been around the block enough. He might have some experience to share that would be useful. They might look at you and say, well, he's pretty young, has he really got anything to say to me on this subject? Does he have enough experience? Talk a little bit about how you went about writing the book, so as that really was not a factor.
Yes. Well, let me say this at the outset. I'm really not qualified to write this book in any official way. I am young. I am without credential, without any real authority. So the only way that I could write this book in a way that felt honest was to appeal entirely to Scripture as the authority propping up the book. So this book is not biblically informed. It's biblically founded. All of the material in the book flows from Scripture. And let me explain what I mean by that. When I set out to write each chapter, what I did was assemble all of the scriptures that I thought were pertinent to the topic at hand. And having assembled those scriptures, simply organize them and put them in a certain order that I could lead the reader through. And apart from the pure scripture citations, the writing that I have done is mostly meant to guide the reader through the biblical testimony, and I hope at the end to leave them with something of a coherent philosophy to guide that particular area of life. So what that means is the book is very heavy with scripture, and it's not a personal book. There are no personal anecdotes whatsoever. There is really nothing that could distinguish it as being by me. I like to think of it as a book that anyone could have written, because it's simply repeating what the scripture has said. At least that's what I hope it's doing. Is that to say that there's no opinion in it? Not necessarily, because I am presenting my interpretation of the text, and I know that there are many interpretations of the text, but I think the benefit of it is I am at least putting the text in front of the reader so that if they have a differing interpretation, well, fine, but at least their belief is founded on some interpretation of the scripture rather than ignorance of the scripture and, an adopted viewpoint of the secular world.
Yeah, well, a couple of things I would say about that. This book is more scripture heavy probably than any other Christian book I've read, right? It relies heavily on scripture. So I will validate what you're saying about that, but that's wonderful, right? Because you're not leaning on your own opinions or your own philosophies. You are doing exactly what you said, weaving together what the scripture says about a particular thing. I don't want you to sell yourself short, though, because the way you have woven these scriptures together makes a lot of sense. And to take something like leisure, which most people would right off the cuff would say, there's not even, the Bible doesn't address that, or technology. All the technology we have didn't exist in biblical days. It's not really addressed in Scripture. And what you have done is you have laid broken those topics down to the foundational elements of human existence, really, who we are as people, and you have made sense of them in a modern world, right? Which is not easy to do. And so, you've done a better job than you're giving yourself credit for, as far as how that comes together in a way that is coherent, in which I believe the reader can read and say, this makes sense to me. And, that's one thing about reading the Bible. A lot of times people, if you take a subject like technology, they're like, okay, I don't even know where to begin on understanding what the Bible has to say about that, you have done that work for them, right? They can take that and boil it down to the basic principles of life and understand how technology fits into that. So I think that's another valuable aspect to the book. And, you know, so yeah, I think for those reasons, again, people should read it because there is a lot of value there.
Thank you. And, you know, I said that this is not really a personal book, and that is true that it is not written in a personal way, but I will say that the experience of writing the book was deeply personal for me, because what I was doing as I was writing each chapter was really figuring out how I am going to live in that particular area. So there are heavy personal consequences for the text. And I hope that what I have done in putting that all on paper is give someone who also wants to live a life that's founded on Scripture, give them a head start in thinking through those areas themselves. I've collected the Scriptures. I have synthesized some of the traditional interpretations of those Scriptures, and so on. So it's like a springboard for the lifelong journey of living a biblical life.